RBI, it publishes the annual report, that is State Finance is Study of Budget 2023 and 24. And theme is revenue dynamics and fiscal capacity of Indian state. So theme is revenue dynamics and fiscal capacity of the state. Okay, so capital outlay is increase, that is 42.6%, and it's around 2.9% of the GDP. That is a capital outlay. And debt to GDP ratio, and that is 31% in 2021 March and 27% in March 2023. So it almost decreased 31 to 27% debt to GDP ratio, that was declined. Fiscal consolidation, it is supporting state consolidated gross fiscal deficit, and that is declined 4.1% to 2.8%. So now fiscal deficit is 2.8%, that is in 2021. And revenue expenditure, and it's increased the revenue collection increased, and revenue expenditure, that was moderate. Increase the tax buoyancy. So tax buoyancy, and this tax buoyancy, it's also implemented and increased, and because of implementation of the GST, tax buoyancy also increased. Tax buoyancy refer to the responsiveness of tax revenue received to change the national income, and that is tax revenue to national income. Tax revenue to national income, and that is the buoyancy. Encasing committee, that was debt to GDP ratio, is center 60%, and now it is 40% and 20%. 60%, now it is 40% and 20%. The committee suggested the escape clause, and this escape clause that allow the deviation from the fiscal target, and National Security Act, that was national calamity. So escape clause, that is we have some money that is escaped in escape clause, and which can be reused in a specific circumstances like war, national calamities, and all that. National capital expenditure. National capital expenditure is Department of the Expenditure, Ministry of Finance, and this is approval the capital investment, that was 53 crore in the 16 states, and the special assistant to the state for capital investment also. So Genesis similar scheme was first instituted in 2020 and 21, and to boost the capital spending, higher multiplier effect of the capital expenditure. So there is a 50-year, that is interest free loan. So it was the interest free loan, and total 8 parts of the loans are there, that is either linked to the reforms or sector specific. Like first is incentive to the old vehicle planning, and third is about the urban local body, fourth is about the housing and policies, and then construction unity of the malls, promote the national integration, children, adolescent, and digital infrastructure, and finally implementing the release of the fund by the state government to vendors and the beneficiaries. So this is all parts of the state capital expenditure. So this is urban planning, old vehicle, incentive to the old vehicle, urban local body, housing, unity of malls, and now adolescent libraries, digital infrastructure, and release the CSS fund by the state government for the vendors and beneficiaries. So next one is the proportion of their share in the central taxes and duty, that is allocated. What is the part one allocated? That is 15 Finance Commission. It is allocating the fund to all of the shares in the capital expenditure. So what is capex? So capex is growth, that is 29%. So capex growth is over capex growth is 29%, and expenditure by the state on subsidies rose at a faster pace, and our expenditure, that is those first step is capex, also known as capital expenditure, and that is we are spending on colleges, hospital, roads, bridge, dam. And capex target is 76% cumulative achieved, and capex target, that was financial year 23, and it was 76%. Okay, now capital outlay of the GDP ratio, and that was expected to improve 2.3% to 2.9%. Okay, so it was 2.3% to 2.9%. Now capex is 2.3% to 2.9%, and early release of the fund to the center has also been releasing the tax devolution, and central government regulated state borrowing under the Article 293, and that was the borrowings, and tightened the borrowing norms and including the off budget liabilities. Production and incentive scheme, it is providing the capital expenditure linked to the 14 key sector. So 14 key sectors are there, and that is related to the production linked incentive scheme. Production linked incentive scheme. Okay. Public debt. What is public debt? So, International Monetary Fund, that is IMF. Okay. So, public debt is related to the internal debt and external debt. Internal debt means the market table and non-marketable. In marketable, there is a G security T bill and the cash management bill, and in the non-marketable, there is a intermediate T bill security against the small saving. So, small saving and intermediates T-bill, that was in the non-marketable. External debt, that was most of the external debt is a form of multilateral agency like IDA, IBRD, and ADB. They are providing loans to the India, that is known as the external debt. Okay, and we have almost it increased like 81% in 2005 and 6, 84% in 2021, back to 81%. Now presently it is 81%. Under this Article 4 of the IMF, that is hold the bilateral discussions. Article 4 is hold the bilateral discussion of the IMF, and Indian growth is expected to remain strong. Public debt denotes the liability payable by the capital central government, and it is against the Consolidated Fund of India. Now it is under the Article 292. Okay, that is related to the debt from the central government against the Consolidated Fund of India. Central government public debt, that was 57%. It was in 2023. Okay, and general government debt, that is represent the indebtedness of the government, central, state, and the government. Internal debt, that was 94% almost internal debt we have. And now discussing the reason and implication of the high public debt. First is fiscal stimulus. Fiscal stimulus means India has been facing a pandemic, that is COVID-19. Okay, and investing the significantly in the infrastructure and social welfare programs are also supporting by the India for the downtrodden society, and serving the internal debt. Now next is limit the fiscal resources. We don't have fiscal resources because of climate change and the green transition. High interest payment, we should pay like 5% of the GDP, that is to India, and lead to the crowding out effect, and that is reduction of the private investment. Crowding out effect is like you are reducing the private investment and now you are increasing the government investment, because due to the increasing the interest rate, because there is a interest rates are increasing, that's why government is reducing the like private sector is not interested now for investment, that is the crowding out effect. World Bank report, that is external debt. Okay, and it is World Bank releasing the report in 2023. It is international debt report. In this 122 low and middle income countries were there, and first is historical rise of the debt. It was totaled 443 billion, and debt service cost due to rising interest rate and unfavorable exchange rate movement. So there is the unfavorable exchange rate. So exchange rate movement is also unfavorable, and crowding out effect is also very not good for the our economy, and outflow of the money because of tighten monetary policy, like the central bank is increasing their interest rates, and that is a tightening policy, and that is because of USA European bonds market that is returning their attractive money. So these all are the reasons. Now off budget borrowing. What is the off budget borrowing? Center for the Social and Economical Progress recently released the off budget borrowing, and this is for the social and economic progress. Okay, and that is known as the off budget borrowing. Off budget borrowing. Okay, so this is borrowing that are not reflected in budget, but budgetary resources will have a use of the repayment. So not part of the calculation of fiscal indicators, but for example, FCI as the paying the food subsidy bill. Okay, it is paying the food subsidy bill, FCI, and bypassing the fiscal deficit target, that is FRBM Act, avoiding the borrowing limits that is under Article 29 3 and 3 of Constitution. And article mandate the state to take constant center before raising the loans, and sender or loans sender's guarantor for the loan that is provided to the center. Avoid the delays and central grants. Okay, so what is the off budget borrowing? Actually, this is social and economical progress fund, and which is provided by the government of India, and that can be similar to the FCI, that is providing the food subsidy bill, or we are now bypassing the fiscal deficit targets and avoiding the borrowing limits, which is in Article 293, and avoiding the delays also. And hidden liabilities are debt trap, which is in India. So first, to reduce the debt trap. So this debt trap should be reduced, and it can affect the accountability also. So we should also reduce this problems. Now, national saving scheme and government fully service bond, that is domestical and foreign market borrowing, which is the method of the off budget uh, scheme. So, in this, there is a national saving scheme, national saving scheme, national saving schemes, and government fully serviced bond. These two things are there. Now, what is current account deficit? Okay, so current account deficit, that is 9.2 billion from 1.3 billion, and although later it declined 1% of gross domestic product, and it is declined 1% of the GDP. Okay, so current account deficit, and that is declined 1% of the GDP. So balance of payment, that is record the transaction in goods and services and asset between the resident of the country with the rest of the world. So this is balance of payment का मतलब होता है कि what goods and services transaction between the country and another country, and that is known as a balance of payment. So transaction of the goods and services asset between the resident country and with the rest of the world, and with the rest of the world. And current account deficit, that is two accounts are there. Balance of payment, it records the export and import of the goods and services. So in current account deficit, there will be import and export, and export of the services. And transfer payment, that is receipt received by the resident for free without any present or future payment return, like you are not returning in future the money, and that is known as a transfer payment. Transfer payment, and there is no receipt for the future payment. Okay, and it can include the remittance, gift, and grants. It includes the remittances, gifts, and grants. Okay, now capital accounts. So in capital account, there is a such as account like money, stock, bonds, and specified usually a year. That is all this, like you can say there is a stock, bond, and money. So now, what is balance of payment? In this, there is a current account and capital account. In current account, there is a visible and invisible. Invisible, there is a crude oil, car, computers, and import and export. In invisible, there is a services like profile, interest, dividend, and transfer payment, that is remittances, donation, and gift. So in transfer payments, there is a remittance, donation, and gifts. And in income, there is the interest and dividend and services. So interest and dividend, and that is in invisible. And services is also invisible. But in visible, there is a crude oil, car, computer, and import and export, and import and export. And in capital account, you can see there is the investment, that is FDI and FII. And in loans, there is a government external commercial borrowings and bank account like NRI. जो NRI के bank, like what bank accounts are another countries in India, that is known as NRI, non residents of the Indian, and that is also included in capital account. And first thing is FDI and FII, that is also included in a capital account. And government external commercial borrowing, what government is borrowing from the external sectors like ADB or World Bank or IMF, that is also included. Okay, so reason behind increasing the current account deficit, first is higher trade deficit. Presently, India is facing the higher trade deficit. Like we are decreasing our export and have contributed significantly to the widening of the gap. Okay, because we are increasing our import. So our imports are increasing, but our exports are decreasing. Export are decreasing. So our import are increasing, but export are decreasing. Second is service receipt decline. So receipt due to the reduced the export of computers. So our service sector is also declined. Impact of global factors like slowing the global growth. Okay, so global growth is also not good because of remittance and challenges because of the lower SCAD. Rising oil prices or oil pricings are also rising, and foreign direct investment, that is also in declining situation. Okay, that is also in the declining situation. So potential threat of the CAD. What is the potential threat? So first is sustain. We can sustain the CAD that was a 2.5 to 3.0%. And getting into the external sector crisis. So we are facing the external sector crisis. First is foreign investment. That is institutional investor. So we are taking the capital from the institutional investors. And exchange rate, high current account deficit, which is long term decrease the global demand, and further it lead to the situation of free fall in currency exchange rate. Okay, so if there is a higher current account deficit, that will decrease the global demand. So global demand will be going to be decrease because of the higher CAD ratio. Okay, and further it will not good for the exchange rate, and exchange rate will also going to be the fluctuation in the exchange rate that can be increased. So that's why inflation will increase. So inflation will also increase. Price instability will be there. What is there? Price in instability. Okay, and that is turn the fuels inflationary concern and leading to further reduction in domestic saving, and also it will reduce the saving and foreign borrowing will increase. So this may create the payment imbalance, and this may create the payment imbalance, and further it lead to the BOP crisis, and this is observed in Asian financial crisis in 1997 and Sri Lankan crisis, we can say. Okay, so this is all about the debt trap, India's trapping. So